The title of this section that we're going to commence with this evening from the opening chapter of Shohoku's Living by Vow is titled Vow as Sangha. And I think this is an important and interesting way of seeing vow, because it's immediately conveying that with vow we are transcending just self. It says vow as sangha. Not vow is one part of sangha, but vow as sangha. That they are kind of intertwined in we might call an essential way, so that we can make personal vows to ourselves, certainly. But the vow that we're talking about, that Shohoku is laying out for us here, isn't that kind of a vow. That might be part of vow as sangha, but this is vow within a community. So given the importance of transcending the self within our practice, it should seem pretty reasonable, insofar as reason has a role to play here. I think it does. It's reasonable that that vow transcends our sense of self. We are making a commitment not just to self, but to others. And seeing that vow, and this is certainly the case with our bodhisattva vows, which is the immediate case at hand here in this chapter, it's a vow that's boundless in terms of where it reaches. So it's not just a personal vow, like a New Year's resolution to stop drinking soda or to start going to the gym, or all the many resolutions that get made at that time of year. And those are beautiful things too. But these bodhisattva vows are, not only are they sangha, but they are sangha in the broadest sense of that term. If beings are numberless, well, that's certainly not true for our sangha, right? Pretty easy to count them. But yet our vow is boundless. So we have to be speaking about the greater sangha. And the way Shohoku begins his description of this certainly points in that direction, because he immediately begins speaking about Buddha nature, or our nature to strive for awakening. And he talks about it as an energy that motivates us to practice. And not just practice Zazen, or not just engage in Buddhist practice, but rather Buddha nature, Shohoku says, is the fire of the life force that enables us to aspire to be better persons, to settle into a healthy way of life, and to practice the way. The fire of the life force. So we're into Star Wars again, the Force. But I think it's no secret that George Lucas had a relationship with Joseph Campbell, and he was drawing from Eastern thought. in his spiritual aspect that he dropped into the Star Wars mythology. So it is an energy. And that certainly immediately transcends our notion of self. Our notion of self is a fixed self. What distinguishes it from other things? But the way Shohoku is talking about Buddha nature, that's not something that's unique to us. We have many qualities that are unique to us, but Buddha nature is not one of those. Maybe the Star Wars imagery can be helpful here. The force flows through all things. It doesn't flow through Yoda differently than it flows through Luke Skywalker. It's the same force. And that's what's being talked about in terms of Buddha nature here. So this energy that motivates us to practice is a universal force. So in the terminology of the Heart Sutra, it's that which is form is emptiness, and that which is emptiness is form. So it runs through all of us as these individual formed beings. But we share this in common with all other beings. A life force that enables us to aspire to be better persons. Now, this is especially has a humorous aspect of it for me because I've recently been rewatching a series I was pretty fond of, The Good Place. And I won't get into it in too much detail to explain it to those that haven't had the pleasure of watching it, but this is people who have died, a group of 4 people, and they think they've gone to the good place, but actually they're in the bad place. But they are, one of those 4 is a moral philosopher, teacher, and he's working with them to help them become better persons because they're not accepting of their fate. So it gets kind of deep in terms of its message here, in terms of the fact that why would people be consigned to hell if they just stopped becoming people that can become better persons? Can't they graduate from that? So this notion of aspiring to be better persons, I bring that into this because it doesn't come to an end. It's part of this life force. It's part of this Buddha nature. That's why I think this series really gets across. It's one of the deeper layers to it. Is this is part of our being, is to be better. And the route to that becomes to understand our true nature. We become better not by changing ourselves so much as by coming to understand who we truly are in our essence, in our life force. So to aspire to be better persons, and this is Shohoku, not the TV series, is to settle into a healthy way of life. And that kind of harkens back to Sandokai, harmony, and harkens back to what we talked about Saturday in terms of the forms that we practice here. This is also to help us settle into a healthy way of life, which simply means we're promoting harmony in all ways, big and small. And this is to practice the way. Because we are alive, Shohoku goes on to say, we have this force to wake up to the reality of life. And it is a force that we experience even as children. You know, the curiosity of a child can be seen as an early form within our lifespan of the awakening of this force to wake up to the reality of life. And childhood becomes this adventure of investigating, understanding more and more the reality of life. Of course, society tends to shunt that off into a restricted path. But what if we had a completely enlightened society? I mean, the Western Enlightenment kind of tried to move us in that direction in some respects, at least certain segments of the population. And over time, those segments got broader and broader. But now we seem to be maybe diverting back. But yet, nonetheless, we can look at recent history along with our own history, our own personal history, and see how this force plays out, the force to wake up to the reality of life. I think it touches in some way or another pretty much everybody. It's just that for some, it seems to touch more deeply. And it can really reroute such individuals. And just speaking from my own experience, it totally rerouted me. Twice. I mean, once when I began my path with philosophy, and then secondly, about 25 years after that initial transformation that took the turn into Zen. So I had two kind of feeling that impact of this life force that was enabling me, leading me to aspire to be a better person, to settle into a healthy way of life, and to practice the way, and to wake up to the reality of life. So the next statement Shohoku makes, I'll also relate to my own experience and invite you, of course, to do likewise for yourselves. He says, when we practice with other people, we gather together small fires. Together, we become bigger than ourselves. So the importance of practicing with other people. You know, when I first got interested in philosophy, I was in the Army. And then it was 6 months after my discharge before I resumed college. So I had a period of time where I was pretty much doing it on my own. But I recognized that in order to do this seriously, I needed to do this with other people. So that entailed going to college, finding teachers there, and finding fellow students who were on a similar path. that was the essential next step. And of course, the same thing with Zen. When I decided that was a turn I wanted to take, I could have stayed at home, read a bunch of books, developed a daily meditation practice. I could have done all that. But I recognized again that I needed to bring my small fire and gather it together with other small fires, find a group, and also go forth and practice with other groups, constantly drawing the energy from all these small fires. So the importance of practicing with others and becoming bigger than ourselves in the process. But then he makes the point, which is also a very applicable one for us, that the number of buildings or people is not essential. So I think it is essential to have a group, but it's not that it has to be a mega church or a mega center. It's just that the essential thing is finding that community, whatever the size. The critical points, he says, are our practice and our aspiration. The aspiration can be seen as what sustains the practice, allows us to turn it into Dogen's continuous practice. And to understand that practice as being fully present. This is the heart of it. You know, when I go to Whitehaven, I don't try to teach them Zen or Buddhism. Those terms very rarely enter into it. But I am, and I'm very clear about it, teaching them to be fully present. But that's what meditation is about. And whatever spiritual religious tradition they practice from is immaterial. I'm not there to try and win anybody over or steer them towards any tradition. None needed, but they can be helpful. So if you have one, great. If you don't, and you don't feel you need one, fabulous. Meditation is for everybody. And that's what it's about. It's becoming fully present. In this situation, Shohoku says, the Dogen scholar he is, I was a little surprised he didn't throw in the term dharma position, which is what this situation is. It's our dharma position, where suchness presents itself to us moment after moment after moment, so that we can engage in continuous practice. Because it's always there. Dharma gates are boundless, ever present. And in doing that, this is awakening to the reality of the self, of our nature. It can only come about through this practice of fully being present, not trying to get some other place, but to wake up right where you are, right here, right now. So this, being the practice of the Buddha way, he says, is our concrete practice of the innermost truth of Buddha Dharma. So, practice of the Buddha way as a concrete practice is living by vow, the title of this book. It's living. That's what concrete means. It's not just a thought. We're embodying it. We're living it. Totally. It can include thought, but it's not limited to it. It's not defined by what we think. It's defined by our lives, the way we live. And words only make up a small chunk of that. Book that I'm currently working with, Michael Pollan's latest book, A World Appears, does such a wonderful job of looking at consciousness and incorporating contemporary research into consciousness, and to understand that there's so much more involved. Kind of the fact that our conscious mind is just a small part of our total mental realm. That we tend to think that our mental activity is kind of bounded by language. A lot of philosophers have taken that approach too. But the reality is quite different. The reality is that there's so much going on underneath the surface, pre-language. I don't mean pre-language early in our development before we learn language. I mean even as adults, to realize that our thoughts, as they come up, where's that coming from? We think a thought just comes fully formed. They're finding more and more that actually there's like, it's a 4-second delay between the activation of one part of the brain that's not conscious and the arising of an actual thought that you could maybe throw some words around. So it's almost like there's this rich stew and part of the bubbling that comes up consists of thoughts. But we have this delusion that, it's a thought, and we're thinking beings and they're just always popping up. But if we take seriously the question of, well, where do those things come from? Interdependence, YN. It's incredible. Our whole being goes into that makeup ultimately. And 4 whole seconds before the brain starts the activation, and we become consciously aware. And as Michael Pollan makes the comment, in neuroscience, 4 seconds, that's like an eon. That's incredible. We're talking about a realm of nanoseconds, and 4 whole freaking seconds. So that can take us back a little bit. But this is part of this concrete practice of the innermost truth of Buddha Dharma. And it's part of Zazen practice for us in the year 2026, is to come to appreciate how that plays out in our mental awareness, our life. And to me, it really just makes our mental life so much richer, because we could have this clearer evidence of the interdependence. It really is this very organic, coming from such rich soil of our whole being. And all the chemicals that make up our body, and they're all part of this thought process ultimately. So to transcend the self means we really have to open our minds pretty wide Because our usual way of viewing the arising of thoughts is pretty focused on our notion of a self. So that's why I love things like that, teachings from fields like psychology and neuroscience, because at their best, they really are rich dharma that can help us open and drop off sense of self to see what's really going on. And that's dharma. Dharma is not limited to Zen teachings, to sutras and koans and all of that. Although I think that's also a very powerful path to open us to these other teachings. And that's why I still am so devoted to the formal practice. But I see the Dharma gates all around us. And I love entering those gates, as you know, and sharing that to kind of serve as an encouragement for you on your path to find those gates and enter them. And enjoy the journey, because it should be enjoyed. It's so very, very rich. And Shohoku, talking about this richness, he says, even though our practice is very small as an individual, it merges with the innermost truth, Buddha's teaching of the reality of this universal life. This notion of Buddha nature, the force, the life force, or just the force. However, I know Uchiyama was fond of using life force as a term. So this is how it comes down to Shohoku. He received it from his teacher. So that brings us then to the last part of this chapter, which is titled Katagiri Roshi's Vow. Katagiri, of course, was the founder of the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. And that's a center this Sangha's gotten to know fairly well through our relationship with Ben Connolly, who is now the guiding teacher. If we were in academia, we might say he occupies the Katagiri chair now. So that's essentially what Ben is doing these days, is overseeing the guiding teacher of Minnesota Zen Meditation Center, which was established back in the 70s by Katagiri. And Shohoku's relationship with them was that after Katagiri's death, which I think was in 1990, Shohoku became their interim teacher. So he was there for a couple of years, I believe it was. So he got to know about Katagiri and his impact upon that sangha firsthand. And he begins this section of the chapter by saying that Katagiri felt that a vow entails responsibility. That's important, this notion of responsibility. And that responsibility is directed to one's own life, to other people, and to the whole of society, beyond individuals. So beginning with one individual, ourselves, and then other people, the people we encounter. But beyond that, the whole of society for the benefit of all beings. The third pure precept. So this is what a vow is all about. It's about responsibility. And to bring it into the political realm, political philosophy, the notion, and it's a problem that we're confronted with today very much. This notion of rights, because we went through a stage where the whole emphasis was on individual rights. But what wasn't attached to those rights, or to the extent that it was minimal, was the assignment of responsibility. With rights comes responsibility. You know, when I say minimally, yeah, so like you have freedom of speech, but you're not allowed to go into a theater and falsely yell fire. But for the most part, you know, our rights are just you're right, and there are no strings attached. There's no sense of responsibility that goes with it. And modern democracy and capitalism both are the living examples of where that leads to. Everybody's defending their rights with no sense of responsibility whatsoever. But vow is this thing that pulls us together. Remember it, this sense of harmony. We can't have harmony without responsibility, without vow. We can't even have that harmony within ourselves or within our immediate group of people, family, friends, let alone society at large. So this notion of responsibility. And remember, responsibility, this is kind of a term with a lot of baggage for us. But from a Buddhist standpoint, responsibility, it's exactly what the word is based on. It's the ability to respond. So responsibility, because this is a practice, we live it. And we live it together with others. Well, it's only natural that this practice at its core is responsibility, because it's our ability to respond to others. How could you live by vow any other way than to have a responsibility to others? And to see it that way, that we do have a responsibility broader than just ourselves or those near to us, but to the entire society. And it flows out of the truth, the teaching of interdependence, the Huayan philosophy. That being so, that we're all in relationship by way of interdependence, a very intimate relationship if we're interdependent. And of course we have responsibility. And it comes back to this taking care of what's right here. By doing that, we're taking care of all beings because of interdependence. But our responsibility goes out to everybody. Our action is right here because our practice is right here. But the impact goes far. It can't be limited, no matter how much sometimes we might want it to be. But that's just not the nature of reality. So back to Katagiri again, who taught that the point was always to walk together with all living beings. Boy, that's a powerful, to always walk together. That is powerful. I remember we're in Memorial Day, the beginning of summer, the holiday that brings an end to summer, Labor Day. That used to always equate to Jerry Lewis telethon, and he'd always close it out with, you'll never walk alone from Carousel, the musical. Yeah, that's the power of this thing, to walk together with all living beings. He knew how to get those phones ringing. You'll never walk alone. Because it is powerful to walk, this notion of walking together. That's what part of protest movements. A lot of times they're marches. They're walking together. It's powerful to have that clear, visceral sense of walking together with and for all living beings. The Buddhist monks that just did their walk together with all living beings across the country. So for Katagiri, dharma means living beyond our egocentricity, which also includes all of our distinctions, such as nationality and cultures and languages and religions and so on and so forth. Going beyond all of those, that's living in the Dharma. It means living together as practitioners, to see us all as practitioners. And that can really be transformative, to begin to see everybody out there is practicing in their own way. So for me at Haven, that's easy. They're practicing recovery, and they've got their way of practice. So I just plug into that. That's why I'm not trying to bring, my particular flavor of Dharma. Don't need to. What I can take that section that I'm there to teach meditation and plug it into their practice, because we're all practitioners, and to really see it that way. I don't have any mission to try and get them to start coming to practice with us. But I do want them to keep practicing, becoming better people, to really learn to live in harmony with themselves and with others, to live a healthy, harmonious life. But I make that clear to them. That's why I'm there. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end there. So let me bow out and open it up to you. If there's anything you wanted to bring up. Jeff?
Your last comment about being willing to let people just go their own way, and you're not worried about saving them, basically, and whatever. Could you explain that by juxtapositioning that comment with how you look at the first vow?
Oh, sure. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them, to free them, to serve them. We might want to choose a term other than save, but yeah. So it's that I go in there because I think I can help them lead better lives and to understand their own nature, so that, in other words, to put it in Dogonese, you have to become awakened as to their delusion. And that's how I teach meditation there. So when they see these thoughts arising, that these drives, that they are being impelled to go back and use again, to be able to just see that as kind of the mind. And I even used the analogy today of the ruminant, uh, because our mind, so much of our mind, like I was saying, is just. This is a little bit different, though. It's the notion that we also tend to think that a lot of our mental activities is triggered by our senses, but actually it's a little less than half, research is showing. But that otherwise it's all this other stuff. And of course, a lot of that aren't these things like impulses we have that are just these uh, conditioned ways of craving things. So it's kind of like it just keeps coming around, and we keep feeding on those, kind of like cattle who are just continue to digest it. They keep processing the same food over and over. So we're doing that mentally. And in order, if it's something that you don't want to digest, if you really have that commitment, then you need to be able to see that and have the motivation to 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 not get pulled in by that. So meditation is really the ability, providing them with an ability to be able to not get locked into it, to be able to let that go. And it's not foolproof. I mean, some of them, perhaps many of them, even though they might leave there and pretty clean and they're pretty good mental state, but yet life, once they get back into the regular flow of things again, it's all too easy to fall back into that. So yeah, I try to teach them meditation in terms of really becoming intimate with themselves and their minds, and to gain power over their lives. I talk about it in terms of empowerment. That's another aspect, important aspect of this practice, because it's a living thing. It is empowering by freeing us from our thinking. We can actually transcend it. Because if we couldn't, then we become fatalistic. Of course, that's a path that they're all too familiar with. It's just the way they are. That's they have all. That's their built-in excuse. But the important thing to realize for them and us is we're in the same boat in different sets of circumstances, but we all have our things we get caught up by. We have to understand this notion of being free. So if I vow to free all beings, it has to begin with myself, and then I can carry that forward, maybe pass that along to some others too. And how do we do that? By not being able to transcend our karma. If it was just all karma, then that would be another question as to why practice. If it's your karma to practice, then you'll practice. If it isn't, then you won't. That's it. So not to worry about it. But we're suggesting that karma is there to be transcended. That's not some radical Mahayana teaching. That's also Theravada. That is awakening, is the release from karma. So that's it. And that's the freedom, the liberation we talk about through the practice. That even in the heart, because everything is the result of causes and conditions. And a few of you were around for a weekend we spent looking at the Fox koan. That's about karma. There's an enlightened person subject to karma. And the short answer to that is no. An emphatic no. Pound the staff down, no. But yeah, there is causes and conditions. There are such things as genetic makeup, environment, and so on. But yet within all of those conditions, we can, by awakening, we can transcend it. And we're no longer subject to it, even in the heart of it. This is where enlightenment and samsara cross over. Enlightenment grows out of samsara. It's not a different arena. It's right there in the samsara, in the conditioning. So that's why it's possible for addiction. Have an addiction, but transcend it. Well, it's kind of the teachings of AA, why they begin introducing themselves at each meeting that they are alcoholics. That's their causes and conditions. But they've managed to transcend that for however long, and they're counting the days, the months, the years. So you can transcend it and become free. And we all can. Whatever our karma is, we can go beyond. But the karma will still be there. Kimberly?
So to go back to this first vow, I've heard you also, I want to make sure that, well, I'll just say, in past Dharma talks, did I hear correctly, or am I understanding correctly, that I've heard you say in the past that you can almost replace it with we're walking with other beings, instead of I vow to save other beings?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just the language is, in our culture, it does sound very, it can really rob people of their dignity, right. Or there's just some kind of hierarchy going on there in that statement.
Yeah.
So could you go back and just
it has all that. It has all that. I mean, I've mentioned in the past when I asked Mike Newhall to be my teacher, because he wasn't comfortable getting into that hierarchical thing too. And his response was, well, he would walk the path with me. So maybe that kind of gets to what you're talking about.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about
Yeah, and I think it's as long as we or whoever we're making that comment to has a pretty good appreciation of what it means to walk with someone. I think that's the key. As long as that's true, then I think that's probably a better way of putting it. Because you're right that saving other people
is problematic,
Yeah,
especially in our culture.
yeah. It just got some hooks on there that we have to be careful with. But that's part of just anytime we try to express something in words. So, but I kind of like the notion of walking the path with everybody out there.
Yeah, and I think what you just shared and how you do spend a lot of your time at Whitehaven, that's precisely that's a great, like a living example of doing just that.
Right.
You're not trying to change somebody. I mean, but yet
helping them change themselves. I can't change them. So they have to really, that's something, that arising of bodhicitta, that has to be happening already. Yeah.
Can you, so instead of saying change, it's not like you're going out there trying to change somebody, you're guiding. You're
there's a guidance involved.
And you could guide through example. You can guide in a lot of ways. Okay, I'll bow out.
Yeah, no, but thanks for moving us to that clarification. I think that's important.
Well, I guess I needed the clarification.
Yeah, but it's good for everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Could I use the saying that you're teaching them how to fish?
Yeah, sure. How to fish for sobriety and a harmonious life. Yeah. But they've got to go fishing. I can't do it for them. But I can tell them where there are fish to be found out there in the lake. If you're going to go fish, go there or over there. There's some places that are kind of dead of fish. Try to avoid that. Okay, let's go ahead and chant out. I vow to myself and to each of you to commit myself daily to the healing of our world and the welfare of all beings, to live on earth more lightly and less violently in the food, products, and energy I consume, to draw strength and guidance from the living earth, the ancestors, the future generations, and my brothers and sisters of all species, to support others in our work for the world, and to ask for help when I need it, to pursue a daily practice that clarifies my mind, strengthens my heart, and supports me in observing these vows. All right. Well, good to see you, Sharon and David. We'll be back on Saturday morning.